Happy Thanksgiving and welcome into the locker room. The gang's all here. We got a great show for you today. With Thanksgiving comes football, and we have a lot of that this weekend. So let's start off with the Iron Bowl. Guys, let's talk Alabama first. A big win this past week against Charleston Southern. But, you know, with the Iron Bowl, you can never count Auburn out.
Yeah, and you never can count the underdog out no matter which team it is. But we've seen years where Alabama won 49-0. We've seen years where in Tommy Tuberville's run where Auburn looked the way Auburn looked all season long in that game. So we're right. You could use the old cliches to throw the records away. But by the way these two teams are playing, it is very one-sided, and that's the Crimson.
Yeah, it'll be real interesting to see what kind of game plan Will Muschamp has for this, because to me this is all about gearing up to stop number 2, and just literally if the quarterback for Alabama can beat you in Jordan-Hare, so be it. But to let number 2 run up and down the field on you, to me it's all about that. Auburn's offense is going to be Auburn's offense. You know, who knows how many points you're going to get. I think this is all about how Muschamp defends Henry.
Let's talk about Derrick Henry. You know, the Heisman talk all over him. After his performance this past week, I know it was Charleston Southern, but he still had 2 big touchdowns. Is he in the front run, you think?
Easily. I think one of the best things to happen to Derrick Henry, and this is going to sound weird, is Leonard Fournette. Because all the hype went to Fournette early in the season, and he put together nice game after nice game after nice game, and then the LSU game broke out, and he has been unreal ever since. And then you go back retroactively and look back at what he did at the beginning of the season, you're like, he's been doing this all year long. And so I really, really like Derrick Henry for the way he runs the football. Alabama puts him in good positions, not like necessarily like Fournette, where everybody stacks the box with 8 and 9 guys, and you're asking him to run in a phone booth, so to speak. But Alabama does enough with Lane Kiffin and his offense to loosen up just a little bit of the defense, where it's basically a hat on a hat, and Alabama wins those matchups almost all the time.
Yeah, you know, the Heisman being an individual award in a team sport, especially as team sport-oriented as football is, it's just, you know, I've never been a big fan of the award. And a good example of it is this year. Leonard Fournette is probably a better overall running back.
Right.
I think he's just got Henry's great, but Henry's on the better team. So therefore, he's going to win the award. And good thing about that is he's on the better team. So I kind of like the idea, if you're going to give an individual award in a team sport, let it go to the better team.
Well, here's what Nick Saban had to say this week as they prepare for the Iron Bowl.
You know, the Iron Bowl was one of the great rivalries in college football. It means a lot to a lot of people in this state as well as all over the country. And it's certainly an opportunity you appreciate, you know, as a competitor. You know, our team has, you know, created an opportunity for themselves, and I think it's all about staying focused on what you need to do to play your best football on the road, not let the outside noise sort of affect, you know, your ability to focus on what you need to do to play well against, you know, a very, very good team.
Let's talk the Auburn Tigers now. A big win over Idaho, bowl eligible now here towards the end of the season. But what's that going to do for them in the Iron Bowl?
I don't think you can carry over too much. I mean, one of the things that kind of stuck out to me is the Auburn defense gave up over 350 yards passing. And I don't think Alabama will come in with the same kind of game plan, but I wouldn't be surprised if Lane Kiffin wants to put it up a few times early on in the game just to loosen up that Auburn defense, knowing that secondary last week was picked apart in spots by Idaho. I think for Auburn, the game for them is let's build for next year.
Right.
And let's not look at the scoreboard, because if you look at the scoreboard from a win-loss perspective, if you're Auburn right now, I think what they've done, they've put too much pressure on themselves at the beginning of the year doing that. And I think now it's just go play free, go play loose, and then the coaches can evaluate this game heading into next season.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it, a little bit off the question you're asking, but, you know, I was looking at this earlier this week. There's about 11 or 12 guys on Auburn's starting depth chart who was in this game 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's not like Auburn doesn't have good players. It's all about the lack of production at quarterback.
Right.
And it's got to be really frustrating for these guys because they're capable of so much more, but the quarterback position has been a bust. So if by chance they get some kind of play out of the quarterback position, which I'm not predicting it, but they've got the players who have been in this game to maybe make it interesting.
I I wanted to talk about the quarterback situation next. What is it going to take for these quarterbacks to be able to produce something against Alabama?
Well, they're going to have to be able to run it and throw it. And it sounds kind of general, but the thing is with Alabama, they usually try to take away what you do best. And what Auburn does best right now is running the football, especially with Javon Robinson. If Auburn takes that away, Jeremy Johnson needs to use his arm, or Sean White, whoever's in there, needs to be able to use his arm to loosen up the Alabama defense. If they can get maybe Rock Thomas on some screen plays, Ricardo Lewis, some seam plays down deep, they can hit plays for explosive plays, 15, 20 yards down the field. That's where the Auburn quarterback situation, I think, is interesting heading into next season for them.
I don't know. I really don't know. First of all, who's going to start? I still think it's Jeremy Johnson.
Yeah, you would figure.
I still think he's going to get the start. He's capable, but I think by the end of the day, after going up against this Alabama defense, I've said this all year, you can't move Alabama's front seven.
Right.
You just can't move them, and I don't know how, with no versatility in your playbook with Auburn's quarterback situation, I just don't know how they can be very productive on offense.
Right.
Well, here's what Coach Gus Malzahn had to say here on Iron Bowl week.
We're happy to get that win, and now we do know we're going to a bowl, but this is Iron Bowl. I mean, all that stuff's great and all that, but you focus in on this game, and very important game. Our players and our coaches understand that, and looking forward to Saturday.
And you can catch the Iron Bowl at 2:30 on CBS on Saturday. Let's talk some JSU football. They got the win over Murray State, the #1 seed in the tournament. They gave a bye this week, but next week Chattanooga or Fordham winner.
Yeah, they're the most, right now, as far as pound for pound, the most impressive team in the state of Alabama right now, and probably one of the more impressive teams in the country. They've been able to focus week to week to week, and it sounds like a broken record if you watch this show back to back. We just keep talking about how Jacksonville State keeps on focusing on the next opponent and the next opponent. What happened last year with them getting a first-round bye, losing to Sam Houston State, I think fuels this football team. They didn't get any help from the NCAA, getting the draw with Chattanooga and Fordham winner playing them in the second round. But I'll tell you what, they're in a perfect position right now to do exactly what they need to do and to chase all their goals of winning a national championship.
What I'm looking forward to seeing is I think this team needs a challenge now.
Right.
That's how I would approach it. You're right. That's a tough first game to have to play if it's Chattanooga. But I think that's what they need. They haven't really been challenged, and it's almost like they're kind of sleepwalking through some of these 30-point wins. It's going to be real interesting to see when they get challenged and they get punched, they have so much more capability than I think anybody they're going to play. I think they're going to be fun to watch. I'm really looking forward to this getting cranked up for JSU because I think they're clearly a serious championship contender here.
Well, we had a chance to speak with Coach John Gross this week as well.
A huge advantage of being off is you're not playing this week is you get Turkey Day off. So we can give them the whole day off, won't have to practice that day, so they can go home and see their family and, spend some away time. And I think it's good. Anytime you can get a couple of days off where you can get away from the game a little bit is a huge deal. So that's kind of the way we'll approach the week.
Well, best of luck to the Jacksonville State Gamecocks and to the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Auburn Tigers this weekend as well. We're going to grab a quick timeout. When we come back, Mickey Shaddricks goes one-on-one with Mumford head coach Bill Smith, so stay with us in the locker room.
And welcome back to the locker room. We are in the locker room down at the Mumford High School field house with Mumford head coach Bill Smith, whose team is one of only a handful of teams left standing in the Alabama high school playoffs, getting set for a huge matchup with Leeds this Friday night. Coach, before we get into that matchup, let me just ask you your thoughts about getting this far. This is a very long road. I know it started way back in the offseason. You're here in your first year as head coach of Mumford. Talk about getting to this point.
Well, we got fabulous kids. I knew when I got here in April, I knew that I really liked the kids' work ethic. Very respectful. I knew we had enough talent to be, to represent the school and to do well. I wasn't able to get all of my coaches in until July, and I'm just thankful to Mr. Young for trusting me and in hiring five guys that I wanted to bring in, and they've done just an outstanding job. But we're really not surprised. We feel blessed. We had some ups and downs in the season, but I've really liked our progress, especially defensively. But we really didn't look too far down the road. But after we beat Leeds in the regular season, we knew we'd have to face them again.
Let's talk about the matchup. It is ironic that you're playing them again after beating them in Week 3 in a thrilling overtime win, probably one of the best games that's happened all year in high school football. So much recent history, too, between the two schools. Leeds beat Mumford last year twice, knocking them out of the playoffs. As the old saying goes, it's tough to beat the same team twice in one season, especially one as good as Leeds. How do you get it done this Friday night?
Well, I mean, really, the team that does the basic things, that tackles well, that doesn't get too hyped in the moment and the ramifications of the game, the team that doesn't turn the ball over, the team that can run the ball, the team that can stop the run, the team that's solid in special teams is going to win. And so, in the end, the first game, yeah, it matters, and I'll always remember it being an exciting game, but it's totally different game going in. They know us better, we know them better. It's going to be an exciting game. This is why you play, and this is why you coach high school football.
They had a very impressive win last week over UMS Wright. They shut them out 33-0. You guys have won 8 in a row. It seems to me that you both are playing at a higher level than you were several weeks ago in Week 3. Is that what you see on film?
Yes. I mean, they really their intensity is really just really picked up very consistently, and they're causing turnovers, their pressure, the way they play defense, their playmakers on offense. They athletically, they're the most talented 4A team in the state. I don't think anybody would argue that. But we just have to be a better team Friday night. Defensively, and I just got finished bragging yesterday on our defensive staff for really coming so far since about week 5. Really, somebody asked me what was the turning point defensively, and I think it was the Dadeville game. We had to beat Dadeville on the road, which is right at a 2-hour bus ride. So we had to go there and win that game to even make the playoffs. And so after we did that and beat them 26-12, and one of our better defensive performances, I really think our defense has come a long way. But it takes a staff a little while to get to know a brand new staff, to get to know their players and what they're capable of, and then putting them in the right position. So it's taken us a little while as a brand new staff, most of which didn't come on board until July, to really get to know what our kids were capable of and then putting them in the right place.
Everybody has heard a lot about their guys. They've got Daryl Marshall at quarterback. They've got the Nation kid at running back. They're really strong up front. But really, so are you guys. You've got good linemen. You've got playmakers like your quarterback, Avery Harris, and, of course, Charles Smith is a handful. You've got, matchup-wise, it seems to be a pretty good matchup. What do you think?
Well, we like being under the radar. And nobody's given us any kind of chance in this game, which we like that. Avery Harris has 44 touchdowns on the year, and nobody knows about him, which is truly amazing, truly amazing. He has thrown for right at 2,800 yards for the season, and he's rushed for just under 900 yards for the season and accounted for 44 touchdowns. And Charles has rushed for just over 1,400 yards rushing. So we feel like we're really balanced. We're averaging about 215 rushing and about 226 passing a game. So we're putting up solid numbers. It takes you cannot be one-dimensional and score points on leads. If you're just a running team or you're just a passing team, you're in trouble. And then offensively, just really the three-headed monster of number 10, their wide receiver, who ironically in middle school was at Munford, and to Daryl Marshall and then Trey Nation, just really physical offensive line. So it's tough to stop. It's tough to stop, and just slowing them down is tough enough.
Great interview there with Coach Bill Smith, head coach at Munford. And guys, he's done a lot of good things in a very short amount of time at Munford and has a chance to do something even bigger this week that hasn't been done in a long time over at Munford.
Absolutely. He and his staff have been on campus for less than a year, and I think one of the more interesting things is what Mickey asked him in the interview about winning twice in one season against the same opponent.
Right.
And it's not just any opponent, it's this Leeds opponent, which is, won multiple state championships, and they probably still have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder from that 49-48 win in the regular season.
Right.
Mumford has a chip on their shoulder from what happened in the playoffs last year. Should be a really interesting game.
We could have talked to a few other coaches this week. Piedmont, alive for a state championship. Alexandria, alive for a state championship. But I wanted to bring some attention to Mumford because I think they've kind of flown under the radar a little bit this year. They are playing at a level that is really incredible because when you're playing at Leeds' level,
Right.
enough said.
Right.
And they are there. Not only did they beat them in week 3 in that great game, but you've seen the rest of the season how it's played out, and they are one of the top teams in the state in any classification.
Right.
So I think it's just great opportunity for Mumford this Friday night. I know it's going to be a tough challenge.
Right.
But I think it could be a fantastic football game. It'll be hard to match what they did in week 3, but who knows?
Another big rematch this weekend in Class 5A, Alexandria Mortimer Jordan. Alexandria won this one 39-36 back on October 2nd. So Mortimer Jordan is ready for this game.
Absolutely, and it goes right back to the heart of Mickey's question to Bill Smith about beating the same team twice. Alexandria has that coming to their doorstep again this week in Death Valley. I was able to catch up with Coach Smith and some of the guys at practice earlier this week about it, and one of the things they said was, one of the ways that Mortimer Jordan came back in the second half of last time they played, and the way they were able to come away with the victory then kind of gives them some confidence, but also gives them some pause and saying, hey, look, guys, we're not going to just walk on this field because we beat them last time. We're going to beat them this time. Mortimer Jordan, as we've seen against Anniston, against Lincoln, that they're very, very fast, they're very talented, and you add hunger to that, and I think you got an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I've had the chance to see Mortimer Jordan this year against Anniston. They are a very good football team, and Alexandria being able to go over there and beat them earlier in the year was very impressive. I talked to Coach Tucker a week or so ago about before last weekend's games, and I found it interesting. I said, Coach, would you rather be at home against Mortimer Jordan or have to go to Gunnersville? He didn't mind going on the road. I'll just put it that way. He knows what he's up against here.
Absolutely.
Another big game, Piedmont, like we mentioned. They did something not a lot of people have done, and they went up to Madison Academy and beat them. They have potential to go a long way. Yeah,
just like Mickey said earlier, they have a potential to win a state championship, and they slayed the giant that's been standing in their way for the last 3 years. And the Madison Academy and Piedmont have gone back to back. We know all about Kerryon Johnson, and we know all about Kohu, their quarterback. We know all about Malik Miller. We know all about Austin Troxel, their 4-star lineman who was injured last week. But I think Piedmont had a good chance of winning, even if Troxel and Miller were in that game. It just solidified to me where Piedmont is right now. And just like we talked about Mumford playing on Leeds' level, Piedmont's playing on Madison Academy's level, and that's good enough to bring the state championship home.
I think they're the favorite to win it all. I think there's a very good chance they could bring home another trophy.
But we'll see coming up next week how all these local high school teams do this week in the playoffs. Back here in the locker room, it's time for our locker room roundtable, and let's talk some college football coaches. Les Miles, he's been a staple at LSU for the past few years, won a national championship, taking them to winning seasons. He's on the hot seat now, and probably will get fired by the end of this season. What's LSU thinking through this?
I think most of it's built out of frustration. And, he's won 77% of his football games while he was there. But I think one of the things that really bothered them this year is that this was the year. This was the year to do it. They had the best running back in the country, had one of the top defenses. They had a capable quarterback in Brandon Harris. And then they watched Alabama stumble out of the gate against Ole Miss. And so all they were thinking is, we beat Auburn, we continue to grind out the SEC West, we have a spot in Atlanta, we have a spot in the Final Four. I think what's happened is that after the loss to Alabama, we've seen this team's been deflated. And that's really carried over throughout the rest of the season. And they lost 3 games in a row, including one to Arkansas, which was kind of unexplainable. And I just think that there was a building frustration, but that was only juxtaposed by the expectations heading in. And I think that's the reason why all these buyers are saying, we'll pony up $17 million to get Les out of here.
This year was the straw that broke the camel's back. Who was the coach before Les Miles?
Nick Saban.
All right. Has LSU recruited as well as Alabama pretty closely the last
If you look at the NFL, for sure.
several years? Right? Has LSU won any national championships in this span?
0.
Alabama's won 3.
Not to mention a blowout over LSU.
That's it. You say what you want. He's not the coach at LSU anymore, but they've had their eye on him ever since he left. They've seen what he's done, and they think they've underachieved with comparable talent. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. And one other quick point, I think this firing, if it does end up happening, is just a microcosm of kind of the ripple effect of what Nick Saban's done over college football. He's just, I think, the biggest domino to fall. We've seen Urban, we've seen Tommy Tuberville, we've seen Phil Fulmer, we've seen everybody at LSU. Right now we're seeing at Georgia. I just think that he is now the biggest domino to kind of show Nick Saban's power in the SEC.
Well, a lot of coaching changes going on, and we'll see that throughout the next month or so. Are we going to see a lot of assistant coaches move up to bigger jobs or head coaches move around to bigger programs? What's it going to be like over the next few months?
I think so. I think that you'll hear a lot of Kirby Smart, and we've heard about his name for almost every job seemingly in the last 5 years. I think we'll even hear some Lane Kiffin, maybe not to some of the bigger programs, but maybe like a Maryland will be a nice fit for him. Mario Cristobal is obviously one of the front runners for the Miami job. Right. So I think we'll see a lot of these assistant coaches, and not just at Alabama, at many other places, getting some of these quote-unquote second-tier jobs.
Yep, I think the coaching carousel is going to get quite interesting. We're in for quite a ride, I think, the next few months.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's continue our college football talk as the college football playoff poll came out this week. So let's take a look at how the committee ranked it this week. Clemson number 1, Alabama 2, Oklahoma 3, and Iowa 4. Guys, what's your thoughts on this committee pick?
You know, you'll see it compared to mine. There's one team that I just don't think fits. And we played that game when we were kids. Which one of these things does not belong? And it's the team that I think that's just kind of out there, and they're undefeated. So I think one of the more interesting things is that if the season ended today, look at the 2-3 matchup. That's a rematch of a big game a couple years ago.
Yeah. Are we going to show his? We're going to go ahead and take a look at Gerhard's now.
Yeah, let's take a look at Gerhard's picks there.
Okay, and this is and I'll tell you the reason why I have 4 and 4. But I swung over to what Mickey said last week, and I had Clemson, Alabama shifted 2-1. Now I have Alabama 1. Alabama right now is playing the best football of anybody in the country. They're focused. They have this laser focus right now, and Clemson being number 2 only is to me because of Alabama's dominance. Not necessarily, it's kind of like 1 and 1A for me. Oklahoma, I love what this team is doing, but Michigan State to me, the reason why I have Michigan State instead of Iowa in that position is they have better quality wins. Iowa has not beaten anybody of note yet. They will get their chance in the Big Ten championship game, but Michigan State has wins over Oregon, over the defending champion in Ohio State, and then also over Michigan. Call it fluke play, whatever you want to. That's 3 quality wins. I got to put them 4.
And let's take a look at Mickey's picks now.
I basically have the same 4 as Gerhard. I've got Oklahoma moving them up to 2, just ahead of Clemson, Michigan State popping in there for this week. But I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a minute. Iowa, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I hated the BCS. It was a beauty contest, and I thought, the playoffs committee has done a pretty good job in its infancy with just putting the best teams in there and forget all the criticism and all the, the teams that are undefeated. Then they stick Iowa in there. Look, I'm going to take a second here. Illinois State, Iowa State, Pittsburgh, North Texas, Wisconsin, Illinois, Northwestern, Maryland, Indiana, Minnesota, and Purdue, and they play Nebraska. Their combined records for their opponents is 57 and 64. And you're telling me they're one of the top 4 teams in the country? That really concerns me about this committee. I thought we were past that kind of stuff, and hopefully they won't be there next week, whether they win or not.
Right.
But you got to be kidding me. Iowa, no way they're one of the top 4 teams in the country.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at my picks for the week. It looks a lot, actually just like Gerhard's picks. Alabama at number 1, Clemson 2, Oklahoma 3, and Michigan State 4. I've always been impressed with this Michigan State team throughout the season, but this past Saturday, I watched them against Ohio State, and I thought they have to be in that top 4. They're a solid football team. So there you see my top 4 there. And as we get closer to bowl season, I think we'll see a lot of things change. But back to Iowa, I think maybe this will be a 1-week deal. Do you think they'll stay in there if they keep winning this week?
I'm crossing my fingers that Nebraska exposes them. They did it to Michigan State early. They didn't expose them, but they got Michigan State at home in a great game for them, beat them by 1 point. I think for Iowa, the road will end at the Big Ten championship game when the lights are all on, because like Mickey said, they have played nobody with the lights on, so to speak. There'll be one of the marquee games in the country. And if they win that battle, unfortunately, they will be a part of the 4. And I say unfortunately because I think Notre Dame's got a better overall record. I think Michigan State's got a better overall record. I even think Ohio State has a better overall season.
Jack State could beat Iowa.
Yeah.
7 of Iowa's opponents are under 500.
Right.
You're kidding me. 57 and 64 is the combined record of their opponents. Wisconsin's probably the best team on their schedule.
Right. And the mediocre season
And
they've
you
had.
put them in the unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, it's time for our Pick 6 segment now. So let's take a look at our standings from last week's Pick 6. And there you see the numbers there. I went 3-3 last week. Gerhard 2-4.
I'm officially
Mickey,
boycotting this part of the show.
4-2. I lead 46-14 overall. Mickey in second, 43-17, and Gerhard 39-21. So let's take a look at our games this week. First up, Ohio State at Michigan.
You know, Ohio State last week, there's so much deflation after losing. And not only did they lose, but they essentially lost themselves a spot in the top 4. I think that carries over into this week. Michigan at home under Jim Harbaugh, who's getting things along there. I like the Wolverines.
Yeah, I think we saw after Ohio State's loss with all those comments coming out of there, they've got problems other than the field. So I think Michigan would have beat them had they won last week anyway.
I'm going Michigan in that one as well. Next up, we have Ole Miss and Mississippi State.
Interesting thing, this game kicks off after the Iron Bowl.
Right.
I think Alabama's going to win the Iron Bowl, so that gives you one of my picks. I just think that Ole Miss will be deflated after this. Mississippi State playing at home. They got the revenge factor, all of that. I like the Bulldogs.
I'm going Mississippi State. Momentum from last week's incredible win. Being at home at night with the Cowbells, I'm going Mississippi State.
I'm going Mississippi State in this one as well. Next up, Florida State and Florida.
You know, Florida made things really interesting last week by barely beating Florida Atlantic. I think that Florida State sees what's going on in the waters over there at Florida. At the same time, Florida might be eyeing just a little bit ahead to Atlanta against either Alabama or Ole Miss. I like the Noles.
I'm going Florida State in this one.
I'm going Florida, the Gators in this one. Next up, we have Baylor and TCU.
Interesting matchup between two teams that were frozen out last year. I love the way TCU played with their backup quarterback last week. If Boykin is healthy, maybe even without Boykin, I like TCU, but I love Baylor a whole lot more in this game.
I'm going to go with TCU at home.
I'm going to go Baylor in this one. Next up, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
Another just a great game between two teams that really hate each other. And I like Oklahoma State in Stillwater in this game. I'm rolling the dice on Oklahoma State for the second week in a row. I put them on poll last week. They lost. Picked them last week. They lost again. I'm going to pick them one more time going with Mike Gundy.
I'm going to go Oklahoma on the road. I know it's a tough place to play, but I'm going Oklahoma.
I'm going Oklahoma in this one as well. Now the big one, Alabama and Auburn.
You know, I've been kind of hinting at this all week and all show long. I just don't think Alabama can be beaten at this point, and not by a team like Auburn. I think Auburn keeps it interesting in the first quarter, maybe quarter and a half, but I like the Tide.
Am I saying it's not possible Auburn can win this game? Sure, anything can happen, but how do you not pick Alabama this year? Alabama.
Going Alabama in this one as well. Thanks so much for joining us this week in the Locker Room. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll be back in here next week in the Locker Room.